Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And let me start by thanking our Sri Lankan hosts, and in particular Foreign Secretary Karyawasham. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be able to present an Australian perspective on peace in the Indian Ocean, which of course washes the shores of Western Australia. And in fact, Australia's search and rescue region extends halfway across the Indian Ocean and borders the search and rescue regions of 6 other Indian Ocean countries. I'm pleased to note also that we are spending 3 times as much time today on peace as we are on progress and prosperity, and I think that's probably the right ratio. I'd like to start by looking back before I look forward. A century ago, European nations found themselves at war. It was a time of intense great power rivalry, driven by the rapid industrialization and shifts in global economic power. Rapid technological change, including sharp military competition. Unprecedented globalization, which made life substantially materially better for many people. But there were also many people all over the world left behind, and there were obvious pockets of instability. Of course, 2017 is not 1914. The idea that a conflict could arise out of Europe today is very unlikely. Brexit changes nothing about that calculation. And the global disparities are nowhere near as stark as they were a century ago. There are many more successful societies these days on the back of decades of peace and prosperity, including here in the Indo-Pacific. But those 3 characteristics, great power rivalry, rapid technological change, and unprecedented globalization, are all present today, as we've been reminded very forcefully in the past few weeks, with heightened global concern at North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile tests. Today, the intensifying great power rivalries are to be found here in the Indo-Pacific. It's 72 years since they were last deployed in war, but nuclear weapons are now held by the widest grouping of states in their history. And nations across the Indo-Pacific are modernising their military forces in accordance with their newfound economic strength. The international community is more globalised again today than ever before, but economically, politically, socially, North Korea is deeply isolated. When we think about what sort of Indian Ocean region we want to build in the decades ahead, it is clearly not one characterised by conflict. On the contrary, we don't want the Indian Ocean to become a militarised arena for great power rivalry. At this year's Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Prime Minister Turnbull put this question to the countries of the Indo-Pacific. Even when the risk of war remains remote, what kind of peace can we maintain? All countries represented here today have a fundamental national interest in fostering peace and security in the Indian Ocean region. But peace, stability and security do not just happen. They require collective, proactive efforts to shape a stable, rules-based regional order. They require all countries to establish and uphold norms and mechanisms for dealing peacefully with risks and threats before they become existential. With the global order in a state of some flux, the countries of the Indian Ocean Rim need to step up our collective efforts to shape the future of our region. The fact is, competition between littoral states has defined the geopolitical character of the Atlantic and Pacific. Historically, the character of the Atlantic has been shaped by rivalry between great powers and a grand alliance between North America and Europe, NATO. Over centuries, it's been marked by a sharp divide between North and South, particularly regarding the experience and legacy of imperialism and colonialism. Since the Cold War, the Pacific has been a story of Asian powers rising against a backdrop of strong US leadership. The countries of the Pacific have built extensive architecture to strengthen habits of dialogue, cooperation and consultation. And Australia has contributed in building APEC and, around an ASEAN core, the East Asian Summit. And we're active in supporting their continued development. It's in no one's interest to see the Indian Ocean militarised for great power rivalry. We don't see here the type of maritime and maritime territorial disputes as we do in the South China Sea. It's in our interest to maintain that approach, as India and Bangladesh did in their UNCLOS conciliation. It's in our interest to build peace on our own terms by establishing and reinforcing the norms and rules we want, including freedom of navigation and overflight, before they are established for us. We need to work together proactively to shape a rules-based regional order that protects national sovereignty and promotes collaboration and consultation. We want to encourage all states to respect international law, including UNCLOS. And we need to recognise the complexity of our strategic environment, which is why the Australian government is preparing a foreign policy white paper for release later this year. We also need to work harder to build regional security architecture for the Indian Ocean. Countries of the Indian Ocean can learn lessons from ASEAN's success. To date, Indian Ocean architecture is limited, and of course, IORA is the premier forum for high-level dialogue. We must continue to support and strengthen its role in tackling regional challenges. But in Australia's view, we need to sharpen IORA's strategic focus. Australia welcomes the work of sub-regional forums such as the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, BIMSTEC. We're also working together on informal, trilateral and small groupings. For example, the India-Japan-Australia trilateral dialogue at secretary level, where we last met in April, and the 1.5-track Australia-Indonesia trilateral dialogue, due to meet in November. In these efforts, we welcome India's leadership role and that of South Africa through IORA. India is an emerging great power and a natural leader in the Indian Ocean region and globally. We support the role India has played in helping shape the strategic and economic environment in the Indian Ocean region. We welcome India's strengthened relationship with the United States and increased engagement in the broader Indo-Pacific, including with ASEAN-centred forums. India's trajectory bodes well for our region. We all stand to benefit from India's rise as growth in major economies drives greater opportunities for all. We welcome India's growing ties with Indonesia. Indonesia is a long-standing partner for Australia on regional challenges in the Asia-Pacific, and increasingly, the Indian Ocean region too. It is emerging as a regional and global power with tremendous potential for growth. As chair of IORA since 2015, Indonesia has showed vision and ambition in bringing together leaders for IORA's 20th anniversary. And as Foreign Secretary Jaishankar said this morning, the Jakarta Concord, signed by leaders at the IORA Leaders Summit in March, was an important affirmation of our shared commitment to building peace, stability and prosperity in our region. We look forward to working with South Africa when it becomes IORA chair next month. And although Australia will move out of the IORA troika, we will remain active in seeking to build IORA into a stronger, more effective and influential organisation. It isn't only the region's 4 G20 countries that have a leadership role to play in the region. Australia applauds Sri Lanka's ambition to become a trading hub Geography is on its side, and as economic power in the world shifts from west to east, with the rise of India and China, Sri Lanka is in a box seat. As it moves forward its economic and constitutional reform agenda in order to progress reconciliation, we see great promise for this island country. Let me speak very briefly about the role of external powers. In the decades ahead, external powers have legitimate interests in our region. Indian Ocean shipping lanes are crucial to the energy security and economies of other countries around the world. Over 80% of China's crude oil imports and up to 90% of Japan's oil imports are shipped through the Indian Ocean. Half the world's container shipping plies the Indian Ocean. We should therefore welcome constructive engagement from external powers. It's in the region's interest to increase dialogue, links, and cooperation with partners around the world. And of course, we welcome the role the United States plays in our region in maintaining peace and stability and ensuring the free and secure passage of the maritime trade on which our economies rely. We should also welcome greater engagement from outside our region on regional development initiatives, including initiatives to improve regional connectivity and infrastructure. These must be transparent, uphold existing international standards, provide genuine commercial opportunities for business, and respect the sovereignty of Indian Ocean countries. In his keynote address at last year's Indian Ocean Conference in Singapore, my Indian counterpart and keynote speaker again today, Dr. Jaishankar, asked, "Is the Indian Ocean more than a geography? And what does it take to create a stronger Indian Ocean identity?" He returned to those themes today. Australia recognises the strategic significance of the Indian Ocean. We want to work with all our partners in the region to create a strong Indian Ocean personality that will draw the diverse countries of our region together. To do this, we need to work together to shape a strong regional order based on adherence to international law. We need to consult and collaborate on regional challenges. We need to build stronger regional institutions. And we need to step up our engagement with regional partners on our own terms and where it is in our long-term interests. Thank you.